Howdy, Facebook peeps. This is Tony Cotta-Spotty. Earlier today, I promised to respond to a list of Obama accomplishments that were posted in a Facebook group called The Sandbox Real Talk. Now, what follows here is a point-by-point response to all of those accomplishments in the list. But before I begin, I want to point out to you that you as the viewer are going to probably question a number of these items and whether they're actually accomplishments. But since I promised to address them all, I'll endeavor to do so. And I'll go as quickly as I can since there are so many of these accomplishments. Okay, here's the first one. He helped rescue the country from the Great Recession, cutting the unemployment rate from 10% to 4.7% over 6 years. It's actually not true. It's not over 6 years. It was really over about 7.5 years. Under Obama, the U3 rate peaked in July of 2009 at 10%. You can check that out at the Bureau of Labor Statistics website. And it declined to 4.8% in his last month in office. The majority of the decline in U3 resulted from discouraged workers that were leaving the workforce for reasons other than retirement. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, labor force status flow reports, which you can find there, employment during the Obama years in office grew really only about 7.1% from where it began when he took office in 2009. Now, by contrast, when you look at another president who took over during a recession, a very bad recession like Ronald Reagan, he grew employment by 16.8%, so more than double. So let's go to 2. He signed the Affordable Care Act that provided health insurance to over 20 million uninsured Americans. Now, here's what's actually true. The ACA compels people to purchase insurance under penalty of law. Now, forcing people to purchase government-subsidized insurance doesn't mean they have access to health care if their premiums, co-pays, and deductibles put health care out of reach. I mean, after all, we're not talking about well-to-do people who aren't buying health care right now, right? And the ACA hurts about 3 to 4 times as many people as it helps. Now, given that 85% of Americans were satisfied with the quality of their health care and health insurance before the ACA passed, it's really hard to imagine the value of passing the Affordable Care Act at all. Let's go to 3. As President Obama helped end the war in Iraq. Now, here's what's actually true. Obama ended the war in Iraq irresponsibly. He was the first president to fail to conclude a status of forces agreement with a key nation. And the withdrawal of our forces empowered Iran. Withdrawal meant that the U.S. was going to be absent from mediating disagreements between Sunni, Shias, and Kurds, and that's what led to ISIS. Barack Obama squandered the victory won in Iraq. He was politically motivated by withdrawing the forces, and he created a power vacuum that was later filled by Iran in the eastern part of Iraq and ISIS in the western part of Iraq. Now, rather than ending the war in Iraq, what Obama actually did was just end American intervention and involvement there. And that's what led to a disaster that we're still feeling the effects of today. And here's another accomplishment. He ordered for the capture and killing of Osama bin Laden. Now, here's what's actually true. There was never an order from Obama to capture bin Laden. The order to proceed with the plan was done without Obama in the room. He was golfing, and he was summoned to the Situation Room. Obama's announcement also revealed the Navy SEALs unit involved, and that resulted in them being targeted, and a few weeks later, 30 of them were killed when their helicopter was shot down by the Taliban. Barack Obama was totally risk-averse. He did not order the strike to kill bin Laden, but he took credit for it. Now, you know what? That's okay. He was the president when it happened, and he should get credit for it. There's no problem. I don't have a problem there. But let's know what really happened. Obama opposed the mission that killed Osama bin Laden. His NSA staff that were in the Situation Room at the time while he was out playing golf gave the go call. And if you look at the picture of Obama in the Situation Room here, He's wearing his golf jacket because they summoned him in from golf. That's why he's wearing a golf jacket. The next, he passed the $787 billion American Recovery Reinvestment Act, which is the stimulus package, to spur economic growth during the Great Recession. Now, here's what's actually true about that. According to the Bureau of Economic Analysis, the stimulus package was a total flop, and all you have to do is read the numbers. Obama promised to fund shovel-ready jobs. And a year after the stimulus package, he was laughing about, yeah, I guess they weren't so shovel-ready. Obama's stimulus spent more money in a single year than the cost of both wars in Iraq and Afghanistan for 8 years. Now, here's Obama's GDP growth record. I'm not going to read them all the numbers off. You can read them for yourself. Incrementally, GDP under Obama only grew by $3.9 trillion. $14.7 trillion was the GDP at the end of 2008 and $18.6 at the end of 2016. But Obama grew the national debt by $10 trillion. So in other words, he poured $10 trillion of stimulus into the economy and only got back $3.9 trillion in incremental GDP. No other president, by the way, has that kind of a record. Obama supported the LGBT. I got to say one thing. This list is full of all kinds of LGBT accomplishments, if you will, which kind of gives you an idea of where the person was coming from who put it together. Fight for marriage equality. Here's what's actually true. Obama broke his promise to allow for objections based on religious conscience and divided the country over religious rights versus homosexual rights. Obama flip-flopped from his 2008 position, which defined marriage as between a man and a woman. Then Obama's position also changed because of gay pressure groups who threatened to withdraw financial support. And, you know, Obama being a politician, I mean, he saw God when he found out that the gay rights groups were going to withdraw money. Obama's position on gay marriage is not based in principle. It's based in politics and money. Faced with losing support from gay rights groups, Obama, who until then had always held marriage was between a man and a woman, quote, evolved into a completely different definition that allowed the campaign funds to continue to flow from gay rights groups. That's the kind of man Obama is. Here's another one. He commuted the sentences of nearly 1,200 drug offenders to reverse unjust and outdated prison sentences. Now, this really isn't an accomplishment, but it's more a recognition of his own failure to push through Congress changes in the drug sentencing laws. Obama never pushed Congress to change drug sentencing laws. Why? Because like everything Obama failed to do, it was politically risky and he never took risks. If we learned anything during the 8 years of Obama, it's that he was very risk averse and places political considerations, his own political considerations, ahead of principle. Number 8, he helped to save the U.S. auto industry. And this is one I love. Obama didn't allow for the reorganization under the bankruptcy laws to take effect in order to protect political allies in the UAW. Now, what I mean by that is in the Chrysler bankruptcy, he violated basically 300 years of business law that ended up roiling credit markets. I mean, for a long time, because of Obama's actions and because of the financial crisis, which Obama made worse in terms of credit markets, people in business couldn't get credit to save their lives. The Obama intervention in the auto bailouts, and Bush as well, caused more harm than good. It disrupted credit markets. It made business credit so difficult to get, and it already was difficult. He created needless subsidies for pet projects when he took over GM, like the Volt. It's just a complete mess. Whenever government gets involved in these things, it's a mess. Number 9, he helped the U.S. put the U.S. on track for energy independence by 2020. This, to me, I saw this and I was like, what in the hell is this person talking about? While Obama was centrally planning for energy independence in the future, you know, with with algae that creates gasoline. Remember that one? The American economy actually beat him to it with the fracking revolution. Despite Obama's opposition to fracking, by the way, the United States is now the world's leading producer of coal, oil, and natural gas. And the latter two, oil and natural gas, were made possible by the fracking revolution. Now, this isn't an accomplishment of Obama's because the American economy, outside of any help from Obama or the government, has been able to achieve energy independence on its own long before 2020. Number 10, Obama's administration began the drawdown of troops in Afghanistan. This one is a real joke. Troop drawdowns are supposed to be dictated by progress on the ground from intelligence and information we get from our commanders. Not for Obama, though. That's not what drives Obama. Obama's considerations are purely political and self-serving. Now, prior to the drawing down of troops, a good leader, not a great leader, a good leader would acquire assessments by his commanders on the ground that drawing down troops would not imperil the general overall strategic mission. But since the mission in Afghanistan was to neutralize and or defeat the Taliban, and that mission remains to be achieved, it is clear that simply beginning to draw down troops is not an accomplishment in any sense of that word. Number 11, he signed the DACA thing, I guess it's a EO, allowing as many as 5 million people living in the U.S. illegally to avoid deportation receive work permits. Now, first of all, this was an illegal act by Obama. It was an illegal executive order because what Obama was actually doing was usurping legislative authority from the Congress. Obama admitted on several occasions prior to doing it that he lacked the authority to do it, but he ended up doing it anyway. Why? Because it politically benefited him. Now, this EO is one in just a long list of EOs and regulations that violated the separation of powers. The unfortunate truth for Obama and his supporters is that whatever can be done by EO, legal or not, can be undone. Now here's the next accomplishment. He signed the Dodd-Frank Wall Street Reform and Consumer Protection Act to re-regulate the financial sector. You know, this one really drives me crazy because the Dodd-Frank bill overregulates the part of the banking industry that didn't need additional regulation and doesn't regulate at all that part of the banking industry that played the key role in the financial collapse, namely Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. Barack Obama was the recipient of the most campaign contributions from Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. He received more campaign contributions from those two organizations in the 2 years that he was senator than anyone else received over the previous 20 years. And the number 2 person who got money from Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, Chris Dodd. As a consequence, Dodd-Frank does nothing to rein in the poor underwriting practices at Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, and the risk to the economy from their bad practices still remains. So what did Dodd-Frank actually accomplish? Here's one. He helped the veteran homeless rate decrease by 50%. Now, in actuality, Obama did not meet his own goal of ending vet homelessness, but I'm going to give him one here because considering the significant improvement in the problem, this is an accomplishment that is made because it made significant progress. All right, he didn't end homelessness. It was too lofty of a goal to actually achieve in the time he was president, but he did make a dent in it, and that's a good thing. So don't tell me I don't give Obama credit for something when he does something that's half-assed but still making progress. He began the process of normalizing relations with Cuba. That's not an accomplishment. That's a black stain on his record. When Obama opened up relationships with Cuba, he demanded nothing in return. Not free and fair elections, no release of political prisoners, nothing. Ever since Obama opened up with Cuba, American diplomats have been targeted and injured with ultrasonic attacks that nobody knows where they're coming from, but we're talking about a communist dictatorship in Cuba. Where do you think they're coming from? Cuba is an unrepentant communist state. It is an imprisoned island, and placing no conditions whatsoever on the Castros for reopening of diplomatic relations, Obama invited scorn from these people. They're mass murderers. It leaves one asking, why set no conditions? It's worse than naive. It's idiotic. Number 14, he reversed Bush-era torture policies. Now here, this is controversial because although some international organizations consider certain enhanced interrogation methods like waterboarding as torture, it's hard to imagine how they could be considered torture, especially when they cause no lasting physical or psychological damage. And the U.S. military actually trains its elite fighters like Navy SEALs to withstand waterboarding. We waterboard our own soldiers. How could it be torture? I know John McCain says it's torture. It's not torture. John McCain is wrong. Now, it's arguable whether or not Bush-era policies were actually torture. A great many experts say no. But reversing Bush-era policies doesn't enhance the security posture of the United States. It doesn't help it at all. Let's go to the next one. Obama increased the Department of Veterans Affairs funding. Now, what's actually true is Obama tried to claim that he increased the spending at the VA by 85%. That is false on a couple of different levels. First of all, overall spending increased by that amount. But that's not due to Obama. Some of the spending is, in fact, most of the spending is mandatory spending. And that's what increased by the largest amount. Most estimates show that Congress approved increases in VA funding for the variable part of spending, a rather nominal 4% per year. So if you compound 4% a year over 8 years, you get about 36% increase, which is nice. It's an increase, but it's hardly the dramatic increase that Obama claimed it was. So this is kind of not really an accomplishment. You know, the saying that he increased the Department of Veterans Affairs, it would have increased whether he was there or not. That's the point. Obama signed the Credit Card Accountability, Responsibility, and Disclosure Act. Yes, he did. He did sign it. But the new law made it more difficult and expensive for people to get credit. People with poor credit could not get a credit card. And not only that, this is a good example of how when liberals do things that are so well-intentioned, how they actually hurt the people they're trying to help. When this law was passed, it was already understood at the time that it would hurt poor people's ability to gain credit because poor people don't have good credit. And what then happens is that in order to get credit, they've got to pay, if they're going to carry a balance, they're going to pay a very high interest rate because they're a greater risk. So this hurt poor people, didn't help them if they were able to get credit at all. Next, Obama worked to boost fuel efficiency standards for cars. Now, every time fuel efficiency standards are increased, guess what else goes up? The cost of your car. You ever notice how expensive cars are these days? The cost increases to the auto manufacturer, and guess who gets to pay that in the end? You. In addition, cars are made lighter, and because they're made lighter, they're more dangerous because when they're driven at high speed and they crash, they don't protect. And sometimes that can mean you get hurt. But even if you don't get hurt, the damage to the body of your vehicle is very costly to fix. So why is government involved in affecting fuel efficiency and setting standards at all? Why not permit car manufacturers and the public to decide how efficient they want their cars and trucks to be? Here's why. Central planners like Obama love planning. They think they know how you need to live your life. So they plan, and when their plans fail, they plan more. They don't stop planning because they never get discouraged. Increasing fuel efficiency standards by central planning fiat is hardly an accomplishment. Number 19, he signed legislation to improve school nutrition. This was, if you remember, the big thing Michelle Obama was trying to do. She's trying to get school kids to eat kale instead of having pizza. So, and I understand her thought, she was thinking in the right direction, childhood obesity, and she was trying to address that problem. But this is just another example of how government tries to plan every aspect of your life from cradle to grave. There are other ways to try to address childhood obesity than trying to force kids to eat kale. Have you ever eaten kale? It sucks. Now, there's a fundamental difference in philosophy between conservatives and progressives. Progressives think government needs to be involved in every area of your life. They can think of some way to involve it. Conservatives think government has a limited role. One thing it shouldn't be doing is trying to tell children that kale is better than pizza, because kids just aren't going to buy it. And there's got to be other ways to address childhood obesity, and they should be addressed, but not by government. Government's the last group that you want addressing that problem. Number 20. This is another gay initiative, see? A lot of gay initiatives in this list. He officially repealed military's Don't Ask, Don't Tell. Now, over his 8 years, Obama had this penchant for finding the most obscure situations and using them to divide the country. Don't Ask, Don't Tell is one of them. The mission of the military is to destroy things and kill people. But Obama turned the military into a proving ground for social engineering brainstorms. Now, the truth of the matter is, nobody much cares how the person next to you has sex or with whom he has it. Barack Obama embraced a militantly pro-homosexual agenda in his second term, and it has divided the country and the military. Now, according to the census, only 2% of Americans are homosexuals. And even if that number were 5 times higher, we should not be re-engineering the armed forces for a tiny minority that can only have a detrimental effect on military readiness. What the hell are we doing here? Number 21. He signed the Hate Crimes Prevention Act, making it a federal crime to assault anyone based on sexual or gender. This is another gay initiative. You see getting the flavor here? Also known as the Matthew Shepard Act, like most things Democrats do, it's based on a lie. We have later come to learn that Matthew Shepard wasn't killed because he was gay. He was killed because he was involved in meth and was dealing meth. This law was a con job from the start, as so many landmark laws that leftists like to foist on the country are. Matthew Shepard was the Michael Brown of his day, but homophobia didn't kill him. Obama used him as a foil to push a bogus set of laws called hate crimes. Now, there's nothing worse in our laws today than laws that treat the very same crime unequally, depending on the race, ethnicity, or sexual orientation of the victim. Assault, for example, is assault. It's not made worse if the victim is black or gay or black and gay. Obama helped negotiate the landmark nuclear deal with Iran. Oh boy. Now, to do this, Obama had to circumvent the Congress with the Iran nuclear deal. By concluding this deal, Obama became the leading financer of terrorism because Iran is the leading sponsor of terrorism. And do you remember how Obama sent like truckloads, literally rafts of cash to the Iranians? What do you think happened to that money? It's just mind-boggling to me. And now, worse still, this treachery by Obama meant that Iran could lawfully obtain nuclear weapons in just a few years. Oh, that's great. That's an accomplishment. That I admit, that's an accomplishment. Setting up the world's chief sponsor of terrorism with nuclear weapons in a few years. That's quite an accomplishment. The Iran nuclear deal didn't have to happen. The Bush strategy, just to put it in a nutshell, was to encircle Iran with friendly governments in Iraq and Afghanistan, hoping to destabilize Iran and create a movement of democracy there, overthrowing the mullahs. And it worked. It did. It worked. But it worked after Bush left office. And when Iran erupted and there were protests in the street, pro-democracy protests, and the mullahs, the government was kind of teetering, Obama said and did absolutely nothing to encourage those people, and they were slaughtered by the mullahs. That was the chance we had to change Iran for the better, to bring them into the family of nations. But instead, Obama had to push his idea, this agreement, and it's going to lead to a nuclear arms race in the Middle East. You're going to see all the Arab countries that are opposed to Iran, all the Sunni countries, looking to arm up. Thank you, Obama. Number 23, he signed the Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Act to combat pay discrimination against women. Now, here's what's actually true about this. The Lilly Ledbetter Act was totally unnecessary because there are already laws on the books outlawing pay discrimination. And further, studies regarding wage disparity revealed that wage differentials were not due to discrimination, but rather to choices, life choices, that women made, like taking time off for raising children. If Barack Obama actually believed in equal pay for equal work, he would practice it himself. But female White House staffers were paid significantly less than men before the passage of Lilly Ledbetter and after. And the same was true for the Hillary Clinton staff. This is a problem with progressive Democrats. Happens all the time. It's all about do as I say, not as I do. Number 24. He nominated Sonia Sotomayor to the Supreme Court, making her the first Hispanic. Why does that matter? The first Hispanic. Oh, big deal, big whoop. Democrats are so wedded to race, class, and gender as you know, as if they believe that ethnicity is a qualifying condition. Like that makes you a better Supreme Court justice because you're a Hispanic woman. Sonia Sotomayor is not an impressive intellect by any measure. Have you ever heard her speak? Believe it or not, Sonia Sotomayor was actually a neighbor of mine growing up in the Bronx. She really was. She attended the high school with one of my friends, and another one of my friends knew her and her family. I'm happy that I know a Supreme Court justice. I think it's very cool. But if all that recommends Sonia Sotomayor to the high court is her heritage, she doesn't belong there. It would be one thing if Sonia Sotomayor was an impressive intellect, like, let's say, John Roberts or Antonin Scalia or Clarence Thomas. But she's not even close. In fact, none of the leftist justices are really intellectually impressive, except for maybe Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and she's barely alive. Now, there was another one here where you called out he supported vets with $78 billion tuition assistance. You already called out the veterans improvements in two other items, so I'm not even going to address this. Number 26, Obama won the Nobel Prize for Peace in 2009 for his extraordinary efforts, which I would love to know what those efforts were, to strengthen international diplomacy and cooperation between peoples. What the hell are they talking? I mean, please, the Obama Peace Prize was a joke. After he was awarded the Peace Prize for essentially nothing, he invaded and/or bombed more countries than George W. Bush did, and he set the Middle East on fire. Obama's winning the Nobel Peace Prize made a mockery of the Nobel Committee. There isn't a human being alive who could tell you why Obama was awarded that prize or if he ever proved himself worthy of it. I mean, to call this an accomplishment, that's unbelievable. Number 27, he launched My Brother's Keeper, a White House initiative designed to help young minorities achieve their full potential. Now, here's what's actually true, and this is true basically for me. One of the greatest disappointments of Obama's presidency is how he studiously avoided the epidemic of absentee fatherhood and the explosive rate of violent criminality among young black men. Now, Obama could have made a real difference by pushing for greater responsibility, but there was too much political downside, and all his decisions are about how things can benefit him politically. When the first black president refuses to aggressively address one of the worst problems plaguing young black men, destroying so many of their lives and the potentialities that they have, really, what hope is there from the political leadership in the Democrat Party? Now, I'm not trying to knock the fact that he did launch this program, and maybe the program it will eventually do some good, but where was he for 7 freaking years? I mean, how much did he actually push that program? I mean, seriously. I mean, look at what's going on in Chicago. Did he ever talk about it? And number 28, this is the last one, thank God. He expanded embryonic stem cell research, leading to groundbreaking work in areas including spinal injury treatment and cancer. Now, what's actually true is that the greatest advances in stem cell research have come from stem cells that aren't from embryos. Obama's action here is just a sop to the pro-choice crowd, which the pro-choice crowd is running out of arguments for abortion. So, that's part of this. And that the efficacy of embryonic stem cell research has never really been established. Most of the advances in stem cell research come from other places. So that's my analysis of all of these accomplishments. I hope you enjoyed it.